everyone, and welcome to today's episode. We're going to be talking about The Voice We Find by Nicole Deese. Now, this one is a contemporary romance. It fits within the Christian fiction genre, and it's also the third book in Nicole Deese's Fog Harbour romance series. So, why did I want to read this one? Well, I absolutely loved reading the first two books in the series. Book one is The Words We Lost, and the title for book two is The Roads We Follow. And they were great stories, and I was really anxious to get hold of this third book, and I loved it. So, we'll talk about that in a minute. But firstly, I'd like to thank the publisher for providing me with an advanced reader copy, and I'll add my usual disclaimer that all the opinions that I express in this episode are completely my own. And the links to the books I've mentioned will also be in the show notes. So let's talk about the book. The Voice We Find by Nicole Deese is set in Northern California in the wine country that's just north of San Francisco. Now, there's quite a few romance tropes in this one. We have forced proximity, where our main characters end up working together. We also have a single parent guardian, where we've got the older brother who's caring for his 16-year-old sister. We have a lot of family drama in this one that unfolds as the story progresses, and it also has found family themes, which I really liked. So let's talk about the first line, which is this one, and it's a long one. I duck dive the nose of my surfboard under the next breaking wave using the same technique my dad endeavored to teach me back when I was a know-it-all punk who believed time was something to exhaust, not cherish. So this one, we're actually in August, is the hero. We're in his point of view, and we're in the Pacific Ocean surfing in the cold water. He's in a wetsuit. And a few things are going on in his head in this particular opening scene, and we get an idea about some of the stress that he's under. And he's feeling quite burdened with caring for his sister, who has some profound needs as well to deal with, which I'll get into in a minute. So, August is 28 years old. He's a sound audio engineer, and he was living in Los Angeles working as a movie producer until 2 years earlier when a tragedy happened in their family. So, he's now the guardian of his 16-year-old sister, Gabby, who his parents adopted when she was 6 from Colombia. And he moved back home into the childhood home where he grew up with Gabby after his parents passed away because of an accident in India. So his parents and Gabby were in a train crash, and Gabby survived. But what's happened since is that she was injured and has quite significant head trauma from the accident, which has affected her hearing. So she's dealing with a significant amount of hearing loss that's making it hard for her to communicate. So in the last couple of years, she's been quite busy learning ASL, I believe it is, which is sign language, so that she can communicate and do all those types of things. So anyway, August is doing some work from his recording studio, but he's not living his ideal life, which was doing the music producing that he liked. And he has a lot of angst around the time when his parents died, and he's dealing with grief. And so there's a whole lot of stuff that's going on with him. So after he gets out of the water surfing in the first chapter, we meet Chip. Now, Chip is the character that connects all the three books in the series. He's an editor with Fog Harbour Books, which is based in San Francisco, and he's also best friends with August, and they've been friends for a long time. And so Chip turns up with this proposal because they're setting up an audiobook division within Fog Harbour Books, and he's looking for a producer who can produce audiobooks. So he puts this business proposal to August to consider. And of course, he's got financial pressures, and there's treatment he'd like to get for Gabby that he can't afford. So he's very interested in talking to Chip and exploring that. And that brings us to our leading lady in the story. And her name is Sophie. And she's 26 years old, and she's a former Broadway theatre actor and singer. And I say former because something happened that ended her career prematurely, and she's broke and homeless, and she's had to come back to the West Coast to her family's winery because she's desperate and really has nowhere else to go. So there's conditions that are the family trust that her family has is quite complicated. So the winery was built up and created by her maternal grandmother, who she absolutely adored, but who has sadly passed away. And so it's her father and mother and brother that effectively run the winery. But there are conditions in the trust where if Gabby works at the winery for so many hours for a certain length of time, not only does she earn minimum wage from doing the work, but she can also access a significant amount of money in her trust fund, and that would help fix a whole lot of financial problems for her. So she's jumped on a plane. She's got her gorgeous elderly cat named Phantom, who basically sits in like a backpack that she carries as well. His cat is very adorable. And so she's returned back to the winery, and she arrives at the home that she loved that's now looking very different. And her brother has effectively taken over the house and is renovating. And he's a very interesting character, and he's given her accommodation in the new pool house that they've built, and there's a whole lot of construction work happening next to the pool house, which is a bit of a problem with the cat. So there's a whole lot of issues that go with that. But anyway, she finds out from her best friend in New York about the whole thing that you can do voice acting. She didn't know about that. So she goes looking for work, and she discovers that Fog Harbor Books and Chip is looking for voice actors. So she applies for a job, and to do her audition, she ends up at the studio that August has. So this is where our meet cute comes in with the story. And it was really, really cute. It was the cat was there, so the cat that was very interesting because she couldn't leave the cat at the pool house because of all the noise. And it was awkward and cute, and there was clearly an attraction. I just love the meet cute in the story, and I'm not going to say anything else because I don't want to spoil it. But this story, there are just so many problems with it. We have August, who's really struggling to parent Gabby because of the special needs that she has. And he really doesn't know if he's living up to the expectations that his parents would have in terms of how he is parenting her. And so it's a whole big learning curve for him. He's also struggling with dealing with the fact that she's has this hearing loss, and he feels helpless that he can't fix it or do something to give her what he considers a better quality of life. And he's left behind his life in LA, and he has mixed feelings about that for a whole range of reasons. And he's also struggling with grief and has a lot of unresolved issues concerning the circumstances and what was going on in his life when his parents passed away. So his parents were on a mission trip in India, and at that point in time, August didn't have a lot of time for God and was really living his own life and doing things his way. And there was a whole lot of conflict that relates to that as well. So there's lots of problems with August, but I think in many ways there's more problems with Sophie. So her family of origin is it's very interesting. Her grandmother, as I said, was her rock, who she absolutely loved and adored. Her father, on the other hand, is very controlling. And so when she was 18, he wanted her to trot off to university and study business and come back and work at the winery. But of course, Sophie wanted to follow her dreams and go to Broadway and study theatre in New York. So her father effectively disowned her and cut off the money supply. So she's been on her own for the last 8 years in New York. So she's not looking forward to having to see her father again. And her mother is pretty much under her father's thumb and does whatever he says, which she finds quite frustrating. And her brother has always been very cold and very aloof. Even when they were growing up, he treated her like garbage and had no time for her. He was the golden child. As far as his parents were concerned, particularly his father, the brother could do no wrong, and he was the perfect child. And Sophie always felt that she was second best in the family system. So, as you can guess, when I discovered this family, a whole lot of red flags went up, and I thought there's going to be a lot of drama that's going to happen because as we go through the story and start unpacking what's actually going on in this very toxic family system. And her sister-in-law, who her brother started dating in high school, is the person that Sophie has to deal with in the family. And it's quite hard to get a gauge on who she is because Sophie doesn't know her and they're effectively strangers, even though they're related by marriage. So it's a bit of an awkward situation. And Sophie's also coming back to the winery, has some childhood trauma that she needs to deal with. There was an incident that happened at the winery when she was 16 that she really hasn't gotten over. She thought she had it sorted, but then she worked out she hasn't got it sorted. So in the story, she's got to deal with some things that happened as well that were extremely traumatic and painful and hurtful for a whole bunch of reasons. And I'm not going to say any more because I'm not going to give away spoilers. So the story has really strong faith elements. We have two leading characters that have a faith journey story arc in the story. And Gabby, who is just delightful, and she has a really strong faith and a really solid faith that came through from her parents. August's parents were very strong Christians. And Gabby was just remarkable in how resilient she is and just the way she manages the struggles that she's gone through. I mean, she's been orphaned twice because she was an orphan in Colombia when they adopted her. She's gone through the trauma of the train crash and she's had so much to shoulder in her short life, yet she has this faith that yeah, you wouldn't think that she'd had such a difficult time when you actually meet her because she's very bubbly, very generous. She's just a really beautiful person. And as soon as Sophie met Gabby, they bonded really, really, really closely as well. And Sophie just adored her. And so that was a lovely aspect in the story that I liked as well. So we have prodigal themes in the story in terms of August's faith journey. And so we have redemption and forgiveness themes as well that I really appreciated seeing. So I absolutely love this story. It's a long book. It's over 400 pages, but it doesn't feel like a long book because so much is happening. The pacing is just beautiful and you just roll your way through the story. So I read this over, I think, 2 or 3 days and just really enjoyed being in the story world. So I love the romance between Sophie and August. There was so much authenticity and really dealing with some big issues because both of them in different ways were dealing with grief and loss and some pretty major stuff was going on. Sophie and Gabby both have obviously childhood trauma, and Gabby from the accident where she lost her parents in India. And the hearing loss issues that Gabby had were just handled so sensitively and beautifully in the story. And Nicole did a really good job, I think, in portraying Gabby's disability in the story. And I love seeing Chip again because he's such a fun character. We first meet him in book one, and it's so good to see him again as well and see what's happening with him. And the family drama in both sides of the family, there was a couple of surprising twists that I didn't see coming. And I'm turning the page and turning the page towards the end to find out what happens. And it was a really fabulous and satisfying ending to the story as well. And I'm not saying anymore that it was really, really good. And I loved it. And this is a book that I would definitely reread because there's so much substance and there's so many good things and it's just such a great story. I just loved it. So my favorite book quote in the story is this one. The ones who suffer the most are the ones who refuse to examine the source of their pain. And there is so much truth in that sentence that's spoken by one of the characters. And in this story, we really see the contrast between how multiple characters have gone through some really tough times and have really struggled and suffered, and they all handle things differently. And I've talked about Gabby being very optimistic and really holding on to her faith in the way that she's gone through some really tough things. And the other characters don't necessarily follow her lead, and they have a bit of a winding journey as they deal with stuff. That if you hold on to grudges and become bitter and don't let go of things and don't forgive and don't move on, then you're going to get stuck. And there are characters that are dealing with being stuck in the story as well and actually trying to work out how they can overcome some of the problems and issues that have happened. So, in terms of the impact on me, I laughed at different times. I cried some tears because there are some really heartbreaking moments in this story that are really deep and really touched me. And so I really appreciated going on the journey with the characters. And there was healing and restored relationships. And I really appreciated how Nicole wrote those aspects in the story and how they all came together as well. In terms of trigger warnings, if you're really struggling with grief and loss or with childhood trauma, then you may not want to read this one next. You may want to wait a little bit and read it when you're in a place where reading about childhood trauma and grief and loss isn't going to trigger you. And it's also the type of book, if you want to heal from some of those things, that you'll can join the healing journey with some of the characters in the book as well. So this one is part of a series, but it's very much a standalone. So the Fog Harbor romances, it's Chip and Fog Harbor books that join it all together, but they're set in completely different story worlds. So you can read them in any order and enjoy them, but definitely read all of them because it's such a fantastic series. So in summary, I recommend this book to readers who like forced proximity romance, especially with characters working together, because I just loved seeing August and Sophie. They basically work on audiobooks together and work for Chip. And I just loved how their romance played out in that working relationship as well. It was fabulous. If you like found family and also family drama, then you'll like this one. If you like the single parent guardian story where the main character ends up as a guardian for a family member because of tragedy, then you'll like this one because there's a lot of emotional depth that tends to go along with that. If you like seeing disability representation in a really positive way and portrayed in a very realistic light, then you'll enjoy this one. If you're interested in learning about how audiobooks are narrated and produced and all the ins and outs of that, then you'll appreciate those aspects in the story as well. If you're interested in reading a book where characters deal with really hard stuff and can overcome childhood trauma and overcome things that have happened in the past and have with a strong faith element underpinning all that, then you'll enjoy this one. And the faith story arcs with the redemption and forgiveness themes and the prodigal themes as well were fabulous. And I love that in the story. Thanks for joining me today. Does The Voice We Find sound like a book that you'd like to read? Or have you read it? Or have you read one of the other books in the Fog Harbor romance series? What did you think? You can let me know. If you're listening on the podcast, you can send me a text via a link in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, you can like the episode and leave a comment at YouTube. And you can also contact me via email at my website at the contact form I have there, which is at narelleatkins.com. Please subscribe if you've enjoyed listening to this episode at your favorite podcasting app or at YouTube, and then you won't miss an episode when they drop each week. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend who you think would enjoy reading Nicole Deese's books, or a friend that likes reading contemporary Christian romance that has a lot of depth and likes a longer, meaty novel. All the books that I've mentioned in this episode, the links will be in the show notes. Thanks for tuning in and see you next time.